everybody. Thanks for coming in today. I think a lot of you actually know Cathy. I think a short member, world-class speaker coach, talking on how to rock a TED Talk, and specifically some of the things that would apply to the entrepreneurial journey. If you're going out and pitching for funding, if you're actually trying to get on the big stage, or if you're just talking to your team, ways that you can communicate more clearly, better, nail that. And that being said, I'm going to hand it off to Cathy. And
all right, thanks. All right. Is there anybody on there? Can you see me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. All right, hi everybody. I changed the title of it to How to Rock a TED Talk. How to Rock It Like a TED Talk, because if you're here and you're like, I don't really want to do a TED Talk, I don't want you to think you're in the wrong place. So I'm going to go all over the place. I coach all kinds of people, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. So I have experience coaching CEOs, like giving presentations, talks. Like I coach teams to just speak at meetings. I do coach people to give TED Talks, and I coach people specifically for telling stories. And I coach huge ad agencies and pitch events specifically for pitching. If there's anything I missed, I coach that too. Okay? Have any of you ever been to a BA presentation? You never have. Never. Okay, I bet you have as soon as I tell you, because it's boring as hell. So when you tell me you've never been to a BA presentation, I doubt that's the case. But for me, I had an experience where I went and I was asked to speak at this really cool conference called NASAGA. It was a North American Simulation and Gaming Association. And I was like, oh cool, it's gonna be a bunch of geeky gamers. And it totally was. But they also had really cool things in the business sector. What is your gamer archetype and how do you show up in the world like that? Are you a socialite? Are you a killer? Are you somebody that's into challenges and that's all you want to do is check off challenges? And so that was really cool. There was fun sessions like personality filters. This is me, it's a box on my head. That you talked about, oh, these are the things that go on inside of my head, but this is what I show the rest of the world. That was really cool, creative, fun. And we created a program and we created a product called Relax Learning, and our little team came up with this little program for it, and it was super fun. When I got to this session, I was so excited. I was like, this is the whole reason I'm here, because all the other stuff is very geared towards gaming. And I was like, this is perfect. Interactive, role-playing, and simulation games for business training. Literally, y'all, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm doing training, right? And so I was very excited. And Ben, I don't know about you, but I would be you in this situation. When I'm really excited about something, I go right to the front. And when I'm not, I'm you. I'm in the back. And I'm like, I can just dip if I don't like this. So I came right to the front, and the first slide popped up, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm not in the right spot. That doesn't seem to be connecting with what was. And I was like, what is going on? And so then I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give this guy a second. He's a professor at a big university. Maybe this is his internal stuff. And he's gonna get to the part where it becomes a business training and interactive role-playing session. He never did, y'all. He kept going down this line. And when I tell you that there was like this weird foggy circle around him, that I feel like he was in his own little twilight zone and had no idea how everybody was just staring at him, like what the heck is going on right now? He had no clue that he lost everybody. And I was sitting there trying not to be rude. I'm a fellow presenter, so I'm sitting where Ben is, and I'm like, I'm not saying anything. I'm just gonna take notes, and that's what I'm doing. But I wrote this, and I'll never forget that day, because I remember it was the day and I went to the most boring presentation of my life, the BA presentation. Now, I coach all kinds of people. I got into this by complete accident. I wrote a marketing book, which Rachel has. The Unbreakable Rules of Marketing. There it is. I didn't even mean to plug. The Unbreakable Rules of Marketing, 9.5 Ways to Get People to Love You. And one of my clients got asked to give a TED Talk. And so I was like, yeah, I can help you. I've been speaking on my book. And since then, I've coached all kinds of people. I coached a 91-year-old. How many people can say they're 91 and they're doing TED Talks, right? I coach all kinds of TED speakers. I coach teams at big companies. Our beloved Tillamook here in Oregon, Nike. I even started this thing a couple of years ago where I was like, why teach people storytelling in boring places like conference rooms? Why not take people out to really cool places in the Pacific Northwest? So I run this whole thing called a storytelling adventure experience where I teach people the art of storytelling outdoors. I also started earlier this year, this is my big startup, I started an organization, an online community called the Speaker Skills Academy. And we run speaking drills right in the room. We have 1.5 hour sessions. And for instance, today we have one at 2 p.m. and it's called Humor Through Humility. And so it's all about the art of creating humor through self-deprecation. And that is something that I started with my partner, Mark. And I'm just all about speaking. And the one thing that I've learned through all of this is there's no such thing as a boring topic. There's only boring speakers. Literally, I have coached people where I'm like, oh, how am I going to help this person talk about this topic? It's so hard. It's so data filled. It's so hard to explain. And then I meet them and I'm like, oh, you're awesome. You have so much charisma. You can talk and then I meet people and I'm like, oh, slam dunk. What they're talking about, easy peasy. And then I meet them and I'm like, how did you suck the life out of that topic? So I promise you, when we're thinking about the way we present our businesses, the way that we talk to people, it's all on us on how we do that. So I'm going to cover 3 things today, just 3 things, and I'll take some questions if I don't cover something. I'm trying to go across the whole array of presenting, speaking on a big stage, storytelling. And the first one is ideas beat information. Ideas beat information. I'm going to ask you all, how many times more likely do you think a story is remembered when it's wrapped, that information's wrapped into a story? How many more times likely do you think it will be to be remembered? Ooh, in between those two. 20, you came back and you got it. 20. If you remember me from last time, I always carry my little awesome cards. You can get as many as you get. 20 times, I think that's really cool. 20 times more likely to any of the clients, or if you're dealing with anything in your own business and you're going, oh, this piece of information will blow people away. It won't. It might blow you away, but it won't blow. They won't remember it. In the moment, they might go, oh, wow, yeah, that's cool. And they won't remember it. But all you have to do is wrap it in a story. And a story doesn't have to be this long thing of, I woke up in the morning and there's a start and there's a middle and a beginning and end. It can just be something as simple as like a short little micro story. And we'll cover some of those in a little bit. I came up with this tool that I use with everybody that I'm coaching for any kind of formal talk. But I found that it's really useful, and a lot of people started using it for meetings and all other sorts of things. And it really is just, it's called the idea map, and it really just gets you to get to the heart of it. If you're gonna have a meeting, I mean, you were talking about you're having a meeting with a client. If I went into it just going, okay, what's the idea? What's the big idea that I want to talk to them about? And really, how do I want to close it? And if I know how I close it, how do I want to open it? How would I support that? So it's a whole thing that I use, but I really can break it down into even something simpler. Anytime you talk, it should be like, what's the idea? What's the emotion I want to evoke? And what's the outcome I want to get to? So idea, emotion, outcome. We're going to play a fun little game right now that I love to call Find the Idea. Because I think sometimes people confuse the idea with the information or with answering the question. So here's how it works. I'm going to have you all ask me a question first, but in Find the Idea, what we're doing is if somebody asks you a question, let's say you're in a meeting with a potential client, they ask you a question, you don't just technically answer it, you build it around an idea. You lift it up with an idea. Anybody ask me any question, doesn't matter what it is. I'll show you how to not answer the question with the technical answer, but yet give an idea.
What did you have for breakfast?
What did I have for breakfast? Thank you. You get an awesome card for asking me that. I'm glad you care that I had oatmeal, but that's not how I would answer it. So one idea angle that I might have is that for me, it's really important to have breakfast. And breakfast is like a really important meal to have every day. Or I might answer it and say, I don't eat breakfast because it's been proven that breakfast, like you should have at least 12 hours of fasting. So do you see how I'm going for the angle and not quite, I'll get to the answer. I'll be like, my idea is, and I'm in my mind, and I'm like, the idea is, and I'm going to tell them that I found that eating breakfast is not really good for you. You need to wait. And so I'll get to it then. I'll be like, I didn't have breakfast. But another question. Ask me another one.
Favorite TV show?
Favorite TV show. So my big idea might be, I believe that watching TV and movies is good every once in a while. If you really want to get into zombie mode and break down and really, but I try really hard to have more creative mode. So that might be my idea angle. Or I could totally take another angle. So I'm standing at a crossroads and somebody asks me a question and I'm like, there's an angle, there's an angle, there's an angle, there's an angle, there's an angle. I might go, oh, full blown, like when I watch a TV show, it's 100% I'm gonna watch all 7 seasons in 2 or 3 days. And so then I might answer what that TV show might be, like This Is Us or something, right? Does that make sense, everybody? And can you see the application for it? So if somebody asks you a question, you get to the idea. Because the idea is about us, it includes everybody. But if I just answer the questions, it's only about me. And so people make this mistake a lot on podcasts when they're being interviewed. Somebody will ask them a question, and then they'll just technically answer it. What did you have for breakfast? Oh, I had oatmeal. What's your favorite TV show? It's This Is Us. But if you really listen to somebody that's they're intelligent in that space and they have a high EQ, emotional intelligence, they'll usually bring it into an idea form. They'll say, TV viewing should be limited and talk about it and then answer it. I'm going to do it with you all. I'm going to have, Ben, I want you to propose a question to the group. Any question?
Where's the closest emergency exit?
Okay. I hope we all know the answer this, by the way. Okay. Now, somebody want to answer that with an idea angle? In fact, we can have a bunch of different angles. Let's shout out some. What's an angle that we can answer with?
Americans are so pessimistic. Thinking about these emergencies, they don't happen that often.
Yeah, they don't happen that often. Yep. Great question. What else? What are some other angles that you can do? Americans are so pessimistic.
History of fire escapes.
Wait, hold on here. What did you say?
History of fire escapes.
Oh, the history of fire. That's an interesting one, actually. There's a whole history to how they make them, and yeah, that would be interesting. Okay, what did you say? That really is, because there were 2 people that fell out of a fire escape in New York, and one of them died, and then there's a whole history, believe it or not. Not to go down that rabbit hole.
Really pay attention to that when I'm flying.
Oh.
Planes.
See, that's more of an idea angle, is like thinking about the places, if you can pass that. Thinking about the places where you would really, I don't know where those are. And typically, I think a lot of people don't walk into rooms thinking about that. Can you see how somebody asked you that question? That sounds more intelligent too, and it sounds like it's more about us. Most people don't think about where it is, because most of us are pessimistic, and we're thinking, no, but you're having more fun with the idea, as opposed to just saying, there's one right there. And the other one is if you jump over the balcony, it gets really bad, right? All right, let's do one more. Somebody pose a question. Anybody?
What's your favorite color?
What's your favorite color? Ooh, there's a lot of different ways you can go with this one. What's your favorite color? That's a good question. So a couple of idea angles.
Color reflects, there's moods that can be interpreted from color.
There's moods that can be interpreted from color. 100%. Yep, I love that one. That one's fun. What else?
People being able to perceive colors, different
Ooh.
perceptions, or some people being able to see different colors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's somebody in my family that's completely colorblind, cannot tell the difference between blue, purple, yeah. So you could go down that route, right? Any ideas that we can use for an angle?
Why would you even have a favorite color?
Oh, look.
There's a reason, because we always ask little kids this.
I love that. Why?
Normal, but like,
Why would you even have a favorite when there's so many beautiful colors in the rainbow and around us? I love that. You can even go into sectors where, have any of you ever been to like a creative conference? 99% of people are wearing all black, right? There's so many different ways you can go. But if somebody asks you a question, think about finding that idea. What could the idea be? And that's the first thing, right? Idea, emotion, outcome. Because at the end of the day, information informs, and that's okay, but it's the stories that stick and the ideas that stick. So thinking about using information, and one of the things I like to tell people that are in information-heavy sectors is if you are going to use information, like you're going to tell your client, this is 50 times faster, what does that really mean to them? They might not, 50 might be really low, right? It should be 100,000 times faster, right? So they don't know. But if you can create a way to make that information interesting, it's so much better. Okay, the second one is your story is your gold for sure. And here's the thing about your story is, here first, this is how a lot of conversations go. This is me waiting for the person who's talking to me, that's telling me their story to shut up so that I can tell them a better story that includes me. Has anybody experienced this when you're somebody? Oh my God, what is this story and what are you telling me? So here's the thing, your story, nobody else can replicate. If there's something that you did, Ben, if you're standing at a conference and there's a whole bunch of speakers and all of the 3 past speakers before you talked about Steve Jobs, and you're like, oh God, not one more person that's going to tell the Steve Jobs story. You get to tell your story, and especially in pitching or especially with your products, like you want to be able to tell the client your story is the gold. But you got to be careful. Again, the same thing we did with the idea. There's an IU balance in storytelling. There's a part of storytelling where you're like, I got the floor. Let me tell you all about me at I. And then there's another side of that. If anybody's ever taught you a tactic and they're like, oh, this is a good tactic, just bomb your audiences with questions. Like when you open your presentation, ask them a question, ask them another, ask another. Both are too much, right? So there's a balance in there. And I'll show you a quick story. I always use this story as an example. Quick 30-second story. I woke up at 2:30 in the morning the other day and I was craving ice cream, but not just any ice cream. I love chocolate. It's my favorite thing in the whole world. So I always keep a Ben & Jerry's chocolate therapy, like 5 different types of chocolate. It's always in my freezer. Nobody messes with it because it's mine. So I woke up in the morning, really out of character, but I decided I'm going to get up and go have some ice cream. I went downstairs and I opened up the freezer, and to my utter surprise, somebody took my ice cream. I decided I'm already up, just going to put on a jacket, flip-flops, and I'm going to go to the store. And when I got to the store, they were out. Anyway, I hate saying that one. You know, how many times did I say I? So many. It's too much. So what if I do it the other way? Have you ever had a moment in your life that you did something that seemed really out of character? Maybe you woke up in the middle of the night and you were really craving something cold, and you know that you always have ice cream in the freezer. And so you go downstairs and you open your freezer and think that you would go to the store and buy ice cream because you're already out. And what would happen if you got there and they didn't have your ice cream? Okay, so tell me the difference between the two. What are the differences?
I think that in the first one, I'm trying to imagine your house, and the second one, I'm imagining my house. There's one difference.
So I did put you in the story.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. How did you feel about the two? Like on mine, were you with me? Were you like curious that were you wanting to know if I got the ice cream?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. You're just because you like me. That's
I
so
mean,
nice.
yeah.
But not everybody in your audience is gonna like you. And they're gonna be like,
Why are you talking about this?
Yeah, I'm just annoyed that you're making all these assumptions about me. Like, wait on the story. I'm like, you're already lost me because I don't.
oh, I love that. Okay, I love that. Right? Because at some point it starts to grind on you a little. You're like, oh, why are you asking me so many questions, and why are you making assumptions about me?
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. So those are extremes, right? So somewhere in the middle is that we use language where we know we're using language for all of us. It's more of a we space. Now, everything that any technique that somebody tells you, please use your brain and common sense where you do it. Because sometimes you don't want to use the we language. If you're saying something that's harsh and you're telling a crowd, you better say it about yourself only. You're making an assumption that's about something that is not being done properly or right, only say it about yourself. Don't include everybody. And then there might be a time where you're gracious and you're only talking about your audience, and so you say it in the kind of you way, right? So just making sure that you have a balance is really the key. I love to call this too, also it's like thinking about the balance of the emotions and the logic. When you're telling a story, the emotions make us feel something, but the logic makes us believe. Think about watching a movie and you see this movie, and if the movie was all emotions, meaning maybe they're in there like shooting everything up, super emotional, all this stuff's going on, but there's really no storyline, then it gets lost. It's not good. It's just one thing. And then if you watch a movie that's just completely logical, where the person's, okay, I woke up at 9:30 in the morning, I rode my bike to work, and then I went home, and I had dinner, and I went to bed. There's nothing emotional, there's no storyline in there. And you can even take it as far as the characters. How many of you are watching a show right now where you're like, wow, this is really good character development? Any good shows right now?
Challengers in the movie.
Which one? Challenger's movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's successful.
It's really good. They went pretty deep on the character. So you're feeling, and then sometimes you feel in any of those characters, I haven't watched it, so in the characters, are there some things where you're like, God, they're really good, but also doing really bad things, right? And that's good, right? Because it shows the whole array. There's some logic into what they're doing, and then there's some emotional things that you're like, okay, I understand why you did that, right? That's good character development. It's not a flat, people have a whole array of things, and we should do the same with our stories. Any other shows that you're watching that you feel are good that way?
Shogun did a really good job.
Shogun, okay.
Yeah.
Another one I haven't watched, but it's same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the main character, the arc in their story is just really well done.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I feel like writers are getting really, it used to be, you turn on the TV and there's 7 channels and there's 7 things you can maybe watch. And now there's so many things, and I think it's created this space for the writers to have to be a lot more creative and a lot more vivid and a lot more, adding a lot more of this in there. I'm gonna go to pitching for a second, but before I get to Rajiv, so Rajiv's a friend of mine, and I coached him for Pitch Black a couple of years ago. I'm gonna tell you the story about a guy who I won't say his name, and it happened here in Portland, and it was for a really big pitch competition, and it was for a lot of money. And I remember watching, and I didn't have anything to do with this, like I didn't coach any, like I coach a lot for the Pitch Black speakers, but I didn't have anything to do. I was just sitting in the crowd, and this guy comes on the stage, and he has this really cool idea. Like by far, it was the best product that was shown that day. But the guy had no idea that anyone was beyond right here. I felt like he was talking to himself. He spent most of the time staring, like he literally was like face this way, staring at his screen and just reading tons of numbers. And so this was a long time ago, and now this is probably such a commonplace thing, but the product was for a drone that could go very far and hold a very heavy weight. And so one of the applications that he barely mentioned was that it could carry medical supplies. If somebody got stuck in the Grand Canyon and was going to die if they couldn't get water to them, but it would take a search and rescue crew a really long time. They could easily get this drone in there. And my brain was just firing with all the stories that he could tell, even if they were fictional stories, that he could tell about how this product could work. And all he did was talk about how good it was, how it could hold so much weight, why it had a good battery life. Do you think the end user cares about that? Do they care about the technology as much as you do? And see, that's one of our problems when we pitch stuff. We think, oh my God, do you know that nobody else has this battery life like our product does? And your client doesn't care about that. You want to focus more on what it will do for them. And so now I'm going to go over to Rajiv for a second. Rajiv's awesome. Does anybody know Rajiv, by the way? He's here in Portland, and you'll see a lot of his plant palm in all the stores. They're vegan sauces, and they're really good. But Rajiv had a personal story, and he went all the way back to his grandparents. And he talked about how his grandparents were from the Caribbean, and that they would make all of these sauces by hand, and they were super healthy, and how in his culture, and a lot of people in his family would eat really bad, and it was really bad for their health. And so he went into this whole thing about how his grandparents would make these sauces, and they were very healthy, and it was very different than how a lot of people in his family ate. It gave the whole reason why he did it. It wasn't just, hey, here's vegan sauces. Guess what? There's a lot of other vegan sauces out there. Being able to tell people your own story gives your why, and there's nothing stronger than your why in something. So here's something I always teach people, and something we can always remember. Stories are from you, but they're for them. Anytime you tell a story, it's coming out of your mouth. It could be your experience, but you're telling it for your audience. Presentations are from you, but for them. Pitches are from you, but for them. Conversations You're part of the conversation. It's coming from you, but it's for the person you're standing with. So just remembering that is critical. So now I want to tell you a quick story. Dr. Eric Tran. How many of you know that Providence Cancer Institute in Portland, Oregon is one of the foremost cancer institutes in the world? Anybody know that? I did not know that until I started working with them. They are known everywhere. I had a friend in New York who is an advocate for cancer patients there, and she went through colorectal cancer herself, stage 3, and she was like, "Oh, we know all about Providence," and I'm like, "Oh, that makes me feel so proud." So I was so happy when we asked Dr. Eric Tran to give a TED Talk at TEDx Portland. Now, Eric, he's so lovable. He's this guy though that he's so smart and you never know what he's talking about. You're like, I have no idea. He can talk circles around everybody because you just don't know what he's talking about. So we had lots of conversations where I'm like, okay, tell me I understand how gene therapy works at this level, but tell me a little bit more. So we were trying to get the magic out of it. But then I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I can find a way that you can tell this to the world and why it's magical and why it's different and what's cool about it. But then what's your why? Why are you doing this? Why do you stay up late at night why do you work really hard, long hours when you have a little baby at home? Why? And so here's a little clip of his opening story. I'll tell you a little bit about his why. You're gonna have to really listen because it's long.
So I remember the first time I learned about cancer. I was about 10 years old and I was on a family trip visiting relatives in Vancouver, Canada. One night after dinner, some of us went into the living room to play cards. And we're all having a great time, laughing, shouting, when I thought I heard something in the background. No one else seemed to notice. So I turned to one of my aunts and asked, "Did you hear that?" And then we all became quiet. And then we all heard the unmistakable sound of someone throwing up. And that someone was my grandmother. I later learned that my grandmother had colorectal cancer, and she was throwing up because of the chemotherapy that she was taking. Colorectal cancer would take my grandmother's life. My story is in no way unique, and most, if not everyone, listening today has been impacted by cancer. Despite decreasing cancer death rates in the United States, the reality is approximately 600,000 people will die of cancer in the United States this year. 600,000. That's about the same number of people in the city of Portland gone every year because of cancer.
Okay, so tell me real quick some of the things that may be connected to you when you heard Eric talk and tell this story. Any little detail that stood out?
Thinking about my grandmother when I was younger.
Mm-hmm. Could be as simple as just thinking about your grandmother.
I was just struck by the efficiency of the language. This story is so tightened down.
Yeah, it's like a 1 minute, 12-second story.
Yeah.
Super quick story. Thank you. What else? Anything else?
He didn't explicitly say it, but there was a sense of dread when he said, "Oh, and I heard something from the bathroom," and that was like, "Oh, something I should pay attention to."
He didn't explicitly say it, but he knew that there was something dreadful that he heard. Yeah. That's what good storytelling does too. It puts you in that moment. Any of the details that you heard that you were like, yeah.
I was going to say that the pathos precedes the logos.
Yeah.
Definitely created some suspense when you're like waiting to find out what the noise was.
Yeah, there's a little bit of suspense. Like what? It was interesting too. He set the scene. He's a little kid. He's the only one that heard it at first. More than likely, if you think about the details of that story, it's probably because everybody else knew that the grandmother had cancer. And so they knew about her chemo treatment. He did not. And so it wasn't until all that stuff came together. But yeah, that's a good one. How about the verbiage that he used, the unmistakable sound of somebody throwing up? When he said that, could you immediately hear that? For a lot of people, you can, because you're putting a vivid description to something, but you're not doing it. And so your brain is going, oh yeah, what does that sound like? What would the unmistakable sound? What about the number? So we did something with the number. We're like, he had all these stats, but we focused in on one number. Anybody want to know why? Anybody know why we focused on the 600,000?
Because he was giving the speech on 4th.
And because it was the size of Portland,
Yeah.
it was relatable. And even if you're not from Portland, you know he's giving it at TEDx Portland. He's literally saying that this is how much the whole city of Portland is wiped out once a year by the cancer deaths, right? Details matter. One of the things that I think is really important about storytelling, I'll talk about here in a second, is thinking about which details to pull in so you don't over-explain, you don't do too much. Okay, here's a big one that people overlook sometimes, even with storytelling or pitching. The outcome wins the prize. What's the outcome? What did you want to get from it? If we go back to the beginning, what did we have? We had idea, emotion, outcome. You should always have an outcome. Even if you're telling a story, there should be a reason why you're telling the story. Are you just telling the story because you want people to know what happened to you that morning? That's not a good outcome for people listening. But maybe the outcome could be for the audience, it could serve as a warning for something. Oh, I'm telling you this because, I'm warning you about this. I was thinking about it, and I looked up the other day this is really funny because there's been a couple of businesses in Portland that have been on Shark Tank. And I don't think any of them have been successful on Shark Tank, but a couple of them have been successful after. So I looked that up and I was like, when did the sharks really humiliate people, which is really sad for the TV stuff. And there's a specific moment and there's something that's missing. Can anybody guess what it is? By the way, how many of you watch it? Okay, yeah. What do you think? What do you think that they're looking for when somebody's pitching a business? And what do you think people typically do? Answer any of that. What do you think people typically do? They pick a part, right? Yeah. How do they pick a part though? They're looking for the outcomes, right? They're looking for, okay, cool. You said you sold 100,000 this year. Are you going to be able to do 1 million next year? And you know how many people can't answer that question, or they're like, oh, and you're like, are you kidding me? You had one job when you got on Shark Tank, and if you've ever watched it before, you know what they're going to ask you. They're looking for outcomes. They're looking for futuristic outcomes, and they laugh at people when they come on, and they're like, I remember this one little kid. It was so cute. They had one called the little kid had Moe's bow ties. Anybody see that one? Oh, it was so cute. He was like 8 or 9 year old, and he made all these cute little bow ties, and he had his grandmother sewing the bow ties. And he could present so well for being 9 years old. He was so cute. And all the sharks were like, nobody was mean to him, but they were, this isn't scalable. Your grandmother's like 80 years old, and she's hand sewing them all. But one of the sharks actually said, you know what I'm going to do for you? I'm not going to give you any money for 2 reasons. Number one, somebody offered me money when I first started my business, and it would have later meant to be millions of dollars lost. So I'm not going to offer you any money because the little amount of money that you're asking for is nothing. He said, what I'm going to do though, what I'm going to give you, the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mentor you. And if you look him up, it's so cute. He's in like Nordstrom's and stuff. And I'm sure one of the things that they got to is what's the outcome? How do we scale this? How can we get your grandmother out of the business and not sewing them by hand, right? So thinking about that. And many times I love when there's a story where the outcome doesn't always have to be this grandiose thing. So there's this TED Talk called the Gorilla Gardener from South Central Los Angeles. It's done by Ron Finley. Anybody ever see this one? No, it's a really good one to watch. And what he talks about is how in South Central Los Angeles, even though it's in the middle of a major city, it's a food desert. And there's millions of people in the United States that live in food deserts. And food deserts, of course, are known to be places where you can't get healthy organic food within a certain amount of miles. And South Central totally qualifies for that, right? And then he shows all these pictures of all the fast food places, and then all the places that people have to go to for their health problems. But he tells this beautiful story about how around the side of his house, there's a little thing, and there's like a pathway. And even though technically the city of Los Angeles owns this piece of grass, he decided he's responsible for taking care of it. So he just decided to turn it into what he called a food forest. And he did this, and he started giving the food to people in the community. When the city of Los Angeles found out, they sent him a cease and desist, and they said, you have to put that back to the crappy ones. Like, you should make it look like that again. And he didn't really go into that, but he said that the city of Los Angeles said, you can't do that. You can't put a garden there. Oh, that put Ron on it put him on a fight. So he ended up not only fighting for this little tiny piece of land, but he fought for all of South Central Los Angeles. And he had this huge petition and it got signed by so many people that now there's little plots that were vacant that they've turned into community gardens because of this one man's effort. And so at the conclusion of this, he does this whole thing at the end. He said, I'm not interested in meetings. I don't want to sit in your fluffy, comfy, cute little chairs. I don't want to go to your conference rooms and have meetings. He says this at the very end, and I think the outcome's pretty clear.
If you want to meet with me, come to the garden with your shovel so we can plant some shit. Peace.
And since then, it's a whole thing. There's so many people that follow Ron Finley. There's so many people that are part of his program. And that's what he got. The outcome was like, come out and plant some shit with me. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to say one last thing and then take some questions. And then I'm going to end with something else. But I want to tell you that sometimes people go, I don't know what stories to use. And I think the easy way to do it is think of moments. For Ron Finley, there was a moment there. There was a moment where something happened that pissed him off. Something happened that really irked him. And so there was a moment where somebody bothered him so much that he was willing to do something about it. You can think of a moment where you were most excited, you were most fearful. You could think of a moment where something really dreadful happened. Many times those are planting places for good things that happen later. If you think about moments, they usually have an emotional impact within them. And you can tell them in a short amount of time. Like for instance, Ben, I hope you're okay if I pick on you for a minute, right? Yeah, good. Appreciate that. Ben, I'm just gonna ask you a question. What's a moment that somebody gave you really good advice and and it did something good for you? Like that advice was really helpful for you.
I think whenever I was younger in my career, I had a mentor who basically told me to treat my weekday mornings not like work, but make sure that you don't go out on the weekends as much as most people do. And like that kind of got built into like my habits that like I've got friends who go out twice a week, and I was always like one max. And like staying fresh actually built into the next weekends, especially as I got older. They just got built into my habits early on. And
wow.
I think it's been really impactful.
Wow. So this one piece of advice, and so see how quickly he was able to talk about that too. I don't know about y'all, but it reminded me, I had a speaking mentor early on, and this is what he told me, and I can tell you in 20 seconds. He told me, Cathy, if you get $0 for speaking or you get $100,000, I don't care which one it is, no matter what you do, when you go out on that stage, don't suck. And I never forgot it. I was like, and it made me really appreciate that even if I was speaking for free, that I'm utilizing people's time, all of your time right now, and don't suck. And so that was something that stuck with me too. Anybody else want to answer that question? A piece of advice that stuck with you, that it was a moment for you? Rachel?
Probably your advice to me.
Oh.
My very first sales pitch deck was so deep in the weeds of like how it all worked and all the different pieces from my perspective. And you pointed out that I should think about metaphors and what their outcome is. You gave me the metaphor of squeezing an orange. And that really changed my thinking from explaining it just from my over kind of jargony interior experience to putting myself in their shoes and trying to use metaphor.
Oh, I love that, Rachel. I did not pay her any money to say that. Definitely not. But I love that because I was with her on the pitch. Ben asked me, I hadn't met Rachel before, and Ben's like, can you help her? She's going to go pitch, and then can you also introduce her to one of my clients? So I introduced her to my client, and so I had a vested interest. I went to the pitch, but the day before, we were sitting over here in the kitchen, and she's, oh, how's the deck? And I'm like, oh, it's good, but a lot of information. And then as we were talking, she said something that struck with me, and then I was like, why don't you use the metaphor of every day you wake up in your business and you have an orange, like how much can you squeeze out of that orange? How much orange juice can you get out of that? And if you're leaving it 60% unsqueezed, there's a lot that you're leaving on the table. And so it worked way better. Yeah. And I know because he told me later some of those things, they worked really well. So I love that. All right, one more.
When I was first starting my business about 20 years ago, I heard a guy speak, and I went up to him afterwards and I said, what advice can you give me? I'm trying to start a business. And he said, first, he gave me two bits of advice. First piece of advice, he said, what's it in? And I said, it's an educational travel. He said, don't do it, educational travel's dead. Went ahead and did it anyways. And still doing it 20 years later. Or he said, there's no business in education, something like that.
Yeah.
And the second piece of advice he gave me, I listened to, he said, give it 3 years to find your first client. If you can't get anything after 3 years, you might want to step away.
Oh.
And it took about 2.5 years for me to get the first client.
Wow, that is such, so see how specific that advice that you got was and it stuck with you? And do you see how if you were telling a story, such a good story by the way. I owe you like 100 cards for me. Do you see how the specificity in that story, so by the way, specificity breeds credibility all the time. When we're specific like that, especially in the stories, how do you know how long to wait? They say most businesses fail within 2 years. Let me tell you a story about the best piece of advice I ever got. And had I walked away at 2 years, I would have never gotten to hopefully what I got to, which was a success after the 2.5 years. I love that. Oh, so good. So does that make sense, everybody? Going to moments? Going to these beautiful moments. Now here's something that's really critical that I always tell people, and the people that do it, it's really successful for, I keep something called a story file. I have it in Evernote, and right now I have like 1,974 notes in my story file. And it's just stuff like that, where if I remember that story, I go, oh, and I write it down. And so I'm going to tell you one that somebody told me yesterday. So I have a friend that he is stage 4 colon cancer, and he's on his way out of this world. He's transitioning very soon, and there's been a group of us that have been helping him along the way for 4 years. And one of the friends that are in that group, she said something to me, and I was like, I've never heard this quote before, but it's so relevant to every single one of us. And the quote was, and apparently it was by a guy named Ram Dass. He was a spiritual leader. Ram Dass, thank you. We're all just walking each other home. And I love that. And I put it in here. I put it in my story file because in 3 months from now, I won't even remember that was said. But I added categories to it. And I added a category of lost story because for me it is a lost story. I added quotes by other people. I have 2 categories. I have quotes from Cathy and quotes from other people. And when I go to speak, I can pull these up. So it's so critical. It's so critical if you want to be great at storytelling. All right, I'm going to take some questions and then I'm going to end with one final thought. Does anybody in here, and I don't know if there's people watching, if anybody has questions there. So questions for me.
How do you deal with stage fright?
How do you deal with stage fright? Yeah, there's no easy way, but I'm going to give you 2 things that you can do immediately, okay? Because a lot of people do get very nervous. I had a client once that was, he's probably my most extreme example. He's a billionaire. He started many successful businesses. He lives in San Francisco. I was coaching him for a talk, and I did not really believe him when he said he's really afraid of the stage. And when he got up there, he blew it bad. I've never seen anybody blow up so bad. And it made me really rethink, this was years ago, it really made me rethink how I coach people. There's one thing that you can do for your body before you speak. And if everybody would join me, it would be awesome. Take your hands, do this. Do it as fast as you can for a second. Go really fast. It's what it does. So your body doesn't know the difference physiologically between nervous energy and excited energy. And then you just go like this. This is something that works really good right before you speak because it already gives you that rush. You don't want that rush to come because you stand on stage. You want to deal with it before. So that's one thing for your body. It really works. It gets you pumped. The other one is a mindset. The other one is to remember you're speaking for them, not for you. As soon as you move the responsibility off yourself, it really helps. Think about professional athletes. They don't have time to worry about their opponent. They have to deal with their own mindset. They have to say, whatever this person throws my way, I have to deal with, right? When you're speaking, this isn't for me at all. It's only for you. And so I'm just the one delivering. So hopefully that helps. Rachel, any there either? No, sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
For a 5 or 7 minute pitch competition, there's very structured order to that pitch deck.
Yeah.
Should you open with a story to set the stage for your pitch deck, or should you go right into the pitch deck because they're investor expectations for?
I personally would always start with something shocking or a story that you want to hit them with an unexpected right away. If you watch, I go to pitch things all the time. There's a common thing. Everybody stands up and says, so hi, my name is, I started this is awesome. It goes in that same thing. What if you came out and you said, did you know that you have an orange on your desk every single day and it's not getting squeezed 100%? Everybody's gonna be like, what is she talking about? I don't know what that means, right? So that's way more interesting than, hi, I'm Rachel, this is my business. Yeah, so stories, something that will hit them unexpected.
Good one, actually. For everybody's trying to get better at public speaking in one way or another. Is there anything we can do when we don't have the microphone in our hand? Like, how do we actually practice?
Oh, okay. How do you practice when you're not speaking? I'm not seriously not a plug for what I do, but that's exactly why I created Speaker Skills Academy. Yeah. Because I realized, me and my partner Mark realized, where can people really practice? Yeah. Toastmasters, a tiny bit, believe it or not. Yeah. They give you a book and they say, hey, do this in a month and then come back and give a speech. Really, you have to do it. But if you were doing it all by yourself, it's painful, y'all. But stand in front of a mirror and practice. You will be your best coach. If I have to look at myself and listen to myself, that is the best way to practice. And I'll practice things that are really important. I won't do the whole thing. I'll practice the opening. I'll practice the closing. I'll practice just telling a story. I'll look at myself in the mirror and be like, so one day I was 12 years old and I'm looking at it going, yeah. Any other questions?
So one of the books that I really like on storytelling and using it in a business context is Story Brand.
Oh, yeah.
Donald Miller. And I'm curious to get your take on the difference. You talked about moments, and that's really compelling. Most of the idea behind the Story Brand stuff is around transformation. Are those two very similar kinds of concepts, and thinking about this in terms of transformation, moments of transformation, not just moments, but something happened. Like you were talking about the outcomes and things, getting to the so what. Yeah. It seems there's always some sort of transformation involved in that.
I can tell you a common thing that happens in TED Talks a lot. It's something that I've termed like low point and a twist moment. So many times there's a TED Talk and there's some low point. The person will tell a story and something very dire happened to them, but they had a twist moment from it. And the idea was born from that. So that is a transformational moment. It's the same thing, right? Yeah. It is the same thing as a moment. I could say, what's a moment that's everything changed for you? You started a business, 2 years, the business was nothing. You might be able to go to one moment and go, okay, the one moment didn't do everything, but this was this was something pivotal that I can talk about. So yeah, the same thing. And it's critical if you think about those things. People want that. I always think it's funny when you read an article that's like, oh, this billionaire will tell you what he eats for breakfast. I want to know what the billionaire did when he wasn't a billionaire. What was that moment that he was eating top ramen and he was driving an old beat up car? And what shifted? I don't care what he does now. I'm not going to become a billionaire because I eat what he eats for breakfast, right? Any other questions, thoughts?
So there's like a time and place for storytelling, which is most of the time. But
yeah.
Is there also a time and place for stating things as they are, like plainly? So yeah, you're telling a story, but is there a point in time where here's how it is?
Hard to answer that one. Yes, there could be a moment. There could be a time where there's something, maybe a really sad time, or maybe somebody's passed, but even then, it's hard. My brain's still going. There probably could be something that you say, we have this friend right now, and all we've been talking about is stories about him. And even though there's this sadness that's looming right now, but there could be. There's never 100% anything, never. But that's where I think you need to have, I always say that there's two paths, there's two lanes in your brain. One is I'm actually speaking, so I know what I'm talking about with the content, but the other one's really tracking what's going on here. I'm really paying it, is this the right thing for this audience? And so in any given situation, you need to have that one going. All right, instead of asking a question, did you have a question? Go ahead.
I just have one more. You mentioned outcomes.
Yeah.
And as you think about pitches and things like that, how do you think about outcomes from something like a pitch? Because I think a founder would maybe go into that thinking the outcome is to get an investor on board to whatever, but is that really the outcome of the pitch?
A lot of people think that, and I don't think that makes you successful. Yeah. I think you have to be thinking what they're thinking. The outcome is really, what will this product or business do in the world that would make it so appealable to everybody that they would want to invest? That's the higher level outcome, I would think, but a lot of people are short-sighted. and they're like, I just want to get $1,000 in this pitch. Like, it's if you're not really thinking about the end user, and that's why the sharks rip people up. They're like, okay, so how many are you making right now? They rip it up because they're like, okay, awesome. 100 of your friends bought a lot of these, or even if there have been people on there that are like, I sold $100,000 this year. Like, that's good for year one. And they're like, how the hell are you going to scale that? And they really rip it apart. So really thinking about long-term outcome. Rachel.
It's probably fairly simple for people thinking about this. I know we're working on this and working with you to see the mistakes that beginners and even intermediate storytellers make. What are the mistakes that you see again and again of people who put a lot of effort into this, like more advanced storytellers?
That's a great question. I do coach a lot of people. I love coaching people that are really good speakers. I love getting into the nitty-gritty details. It's usually around storytelling. It's usually that they're not good enough at the storytelling. They're good speakers, they're charismatic, they're usually doing too much it's usually around the IU balance. It's usually the psychological things that people don't think about. They're like, oh, I have great stage presence, I'm charismatic. And it's, your storytelling could use a lot of work. I know we only have an hour, so wrapping it up. I'm just going to end on thank you for the great questions. I'm available to anybody, so anybody out there watching, even Emily, I'm available to our community at any point. If anybody's doing a pitch and you want to throw something by me, like what Rachel and I did, I'm happy to talk to you about any of that. So reach out. And I just want to end on this, and it's just going back to the beginning. I just want to end on this thought again, that every single one of you in this room, anybody watching, you can be an awesome, amazing pitcher, storyteller, presenter, speaker, friend, networker, anything, right? Just by remembering that there's no such thing as a boring topic.
Thank you, Cathy, for coming in.
Yeah.